In crowded B2B markets, strong products aren't enough. Winning comes down to how well you understand the competitive landscape and how clearly you position your product to lead.
The goal here is to move from a more reactive state where we don't know of the competitors' moves to a more proactive one where we are the ones setting the pace for the industry, for the market, and for our customers. The third one is innovation velocity. Now, talking about innovation in silo, it's not the full comparison. You also need to take into consideration the pace at which your competitors are bringing innovation to the market. And that does make a big difference from your customer standpoint and how your customers are adopting the products that you are shipping to the market. The goal should be to be in the top right quadrant. So whatever feature set or whatever new strategy that you're planning for must bring you to the top right corner. So that should be essentially the North Star of how you're moving towards.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining today's session, How Great PMs Outsmart the Competition. To kick off the program, I'll be introducing our featured guest speaker and give her the virtual stage to lead the show. Now, to introduce our speaker, in crowded B2B markets, strong products aren't enough. Winning comes down to how well you understand the competitive landscape and how clearly you position your product to lead. Our speaker today, Devanshi Kotak, knows this challenge firsthand. She's a senior product manager at Cisco, where she works on AI-ready data center networking and media fabrics, complex, high-impact areas where stakes are high and competition is fierce. Devanshi brings a rare combination, a background in data science, entrepreneurship, and product leadership across industries as varied as financial services, fashion, and tech. Her approach blends analytical rigor with customer-centered thinking, focused on solving real problems and delivering meaningful outcomes. She holds an engineering degree from BITS Pilani and an MBA from Duke's Fuqua School of Business. And she brings that sharp multidisciplinary thinking to everything she builds. Today, she's here to share how great PMs can use competitive insight, not just to react, but to win competitive B2B markets. Please welcome Devanshi Kotak.
Thanks a lot, Saik, for a great introduction. All right. Hello, everyone. And thank you so much for taking out the time to join this session. As Saik mentioned, I am the Senior Product Manager at Cisco. And thank you again, Saik, for the kind words. Today, essentially, we are going to dive deeper into a critical skill, specifically in the B2B world, which is competitive analytics. And before we jump into the frameworks and the details of how to do competitive analytics specifically for the B2B environment, I want to touch a little bit upon why is it uniquely important to be aware of your competition in the B2B space. So unlike B2C, our customers aren't making impulse buys. They are making significant long-term investments. They face high switching costs, complex procurement processes, and the decision to buy products impacts their entire organization. In this environment, competitive analysis isn't just about the features, it is also about the strategic roadmap or the strategic path forward for navigating longer sales cycles, ROIs, and building defensible moats that ensure long-term partnerships with our customers. So having said that, we'll spend the next 30 minutes, first of all, talking about how to identify your competitor in the market, followed by a competitive analysis framework and what areas and specific buckets or basically areas to consider when talking about competitive analysis. And finally, I'll touch a little bit upon the implementation strategy and integrating the final differences, moats, or value that you discover out of the competitive analysis. All right, so let's begin this journey of navigating the competitive landscape. And the goal here is to move from a more reactive state where we don't know of the competitors' moves to a more proactive one where we are the ones setting the pace for the industry, for the market, and for our customers. All right, now starting off with identifying the real competition, I have divided the competition into 4 different types of competitors. We're very familiar with direct and indirect competitors. And what I mean by these is, first of all, talking about direct competitors. Direct competitors are the competitors that are solving the exact same problem that you are solving in a very similar manner and competing for the same customers, for the same markets, and with similar pricing strategies. Some of the examples specifically in the B2B world is you can consider Google Cloud versus AWS versus Microsoft Azure. All these three are direct competitors of each other. Going to the second type, which is indirect competitor. Indirect competitors are essentially competitors that are solving the same problem, but in a different manner. They might be targeting different markets, they might be catering to a different audience, but essentially they're still solving the same problem. An example here in the same context of Google Cloud, AWS could be essentially an on-prem data center. It's essentially still solving the same problem, but the way of solving the problem is quite different from a cloud offering. Now, an emerging competitor, I have pulled it out into a different bucket because emerging competitors, they're often venture-backed companies which are smaller in size, but they're still targeting or going after the same problem statement that you are in maybe a much more innovative manner, or they might be entering the market with a very different business proposition or an innovation. So it is important to put them into a different category and try and deal with them a little differently as compared to our direct and indirect competitors. Finally, the fourth category, and I call it specific to B2B kind of an environment, is a legacy technology. This isn't another vendor. It's essentially the collection of in-house databases, custom built tools, or maybe just even, a good enough complex Excel spreadsheets. And these do form a very big part of the competition in a B2B environment. And ignoring legacy technology, specifically in a B2B world, is a big crime for sure. All right, let me jump into the competitive analytics framework. And this framework, essentially, I've put it together for targeting the first 3 types of competitors, which is direct, indirect, and emerging competitors. And I divide the competitive analysis into 4 different buckets, where first of all, there is product and technology, where you are comparing the product offerings from each of these competitors with your product offering. The second bucket is go-to-market and marketing strategy. The third one is the company vision and strategy, where your competitors are going in the next couple of years, as well as the ecosystem that they've built. And the fourth one is customer perception and trust. Now let's dive deeper into each of these buckets and how do we analyze for each of these areas. First of all, starting off with product and technology, here we look into product level differentiations. And again, I've divided it into 5 different areas where you should be evaluating your product and technology versus what the competitor is offering. The first one is use cases and feature sets. This is the place where most of us spend most of our time when talking about competitive analysis. And it does give a differentiation when we talk about competitors. Here are the different kinds of use cases that your competitors are targeting with the solution that they are offering, as well as the different kinds of features, innovations that they are offering with their product. It is good to list down all the features that your competitor is offering versus what you are offering. And along with that, also try and quantify how these innovative features are solving a problem for your customer or even making it easier for your customers to adopt. The second area is technology differentiation. Now, here, take into consideration all the patents and maybe, research or montages that your competitor has, which either you cannot have because it is a patent, or it is something that you can take into consideration but you do not have today. So, technology differentiation also forms a big part of the competitive analytics that you conduct. The third one is innovation velocity. Now, talking about innovation in silo, it's not the full comparison. You also need to take into consideration the pace at which your competitors are bringing innovation to the market. And that does make a big difference from your customer standpoint and how your customers are adopting the products that you are shipping to the market. The fourth area is the UI UX, or how your customers interact with your product, the ease at which the customers are interacting with the product, and comparing what you offer versus what the competitor is offering. Here, I also include solution bundles, which means what are the complementary products that your competitor is offering versus what you are offering, and how it makes it easier for your customer to adopt the product that maybe your competitor is offering. Finally, the fifth pillar is security. Security, it's a very important pillar when we talk about B2B environments, because B2B sales decisions heavily consider security into their decision-making process. And comparing yourself with your competitor based on security integration, security feature sets, as well as compliance with the new government regulations is an important factor of the competitive analytics that you conduct. Now, let me move on to the go-to-market and marketing strategy. A product in the B2B world does not sell by itself. And that is why the go-to-market and marketing engine is quite vital. Again, this particular area, I divided into 5 different pillars to analyze and break down your competitor's strategy into these 5 different buckets to make it easier for you to compare where you stand versus how your competitor is positioning themselves in the market. Now, starting off with the pricing and promotion strategy. Here, you need to take into consideration what is the kind of pricing model that your competitors are offering to your customers, which is it, per seat basis, usage based, or is there a flat platform fee? Are there any kind of freemium models that the competitor is offering, which is making it easier for your customers to test out the products? Are there proof of concepts or testing processes where the competitor is hand-holding your customers, again, making it easier for the customer to adopt, and even de-risking the adoption for the customer, because now you have already given a proof of concept or helped them through the testing phase of the product before they made a decision of buying the product. The second one is product positioning. Now, product positioning is a really important part because it is important to understand for you what is the product value that your competitor is marketing to your customers. Is it cost saving? Is it revenue generation? Is it risk mitigation? Where is the positioning of your competitors for your customers? And comparing it with what is it that the customers are valuing when it comes to their decision-making process. Most of the times in B2B environments, it becomes critical that the positioning is very much integration of security along with the product value that you're giving to the customers, because that it's the very basic requirement that the customers go after. Additionally, just adding on to the pricing and promotion strategy, a lot of the times heavy discounting, enterprise-based discounting, and product bundles and solution bundling is something that is important to evaluate, specifically in a B2B environment, because customers are making a long-term decision of buying your product instead of a short-term one. So they value the relationship that you bring to the table when it comes to pricing and promotion, or even product positioning. The third pillar is sales and post-sales strategy. I touched a little bit upon your customers making a long-term decision, and a sales and post-sales strategy also hold a lot of value since it's going to be a long-term decision for the customers. It is important for you to evaluate how is it that your competitors are selling their product. Is it through a field sales team? Is it through network of channel partners or resellers? To understand where exactly are your customers or where exactly are your new customers that you're not really targeting or positioning for today. That's the sales strategy. Post-sales strategy also play a huge role in terms of what are the added benefits that the customers are getting if they are locking into buying a product with you, which means what are the post-sales services that they get, what is the customer support, and what are the troubleshooting tactics that you're offering beyond the value of the product itself. And finally, target market, target customer are extremely important. It gives you an idea into what more can you target since the competitor is already targeting these verticals with the same product, with the same solution. So these are some of the areas that you can actually analyze or break down your competitive analysis for the different types of customers. Now, jumping into the last two pillars, which is the company vision and ecosystem, as well as customer perception and trust. Now, talking about company vision and ecosystem, like I said, your customers are not just investing in the product, but they're also investing in the company because when it's B2B customers, they are making these decisions for a very long period of time instead of, like I said, impulse buys. So it is important for them to understand what is the long-term strategy and where is it that the product is moving next. And for you, it is important to understand where your competitors are going next because that's a very big indicator of where the market is heading or where there's a possibility of new business, new market to target. And specifically, if you have a lot of emerging competitors or emerging startups that are finding their way into your industry, it is important to analyze their profitability, their growth plans, and how and where they're getting the funding from, because that, again, is a very big indicator of where the market is moving towards and where are the next synergies of your product to move towards. Ecosystem is another big area to analyze. If there are any complementary products or industry partnerships that your competitors are establishing, these are extremely valuable in cross-selling of products as well as bringing the attention of a newer set of customers. Now, finally, customer perception and trust. This is a very big part of B2B sales because B2B customer, it is important for B2B customers to know who else is using the product and for what use cases. And for this, it is important to evaluate, who are the public customer references of your competitors, as well as going through analyst reports of, say, Gartner or Forrester to understand where your competitors are positioning themselves and how are they building trust within the industry. And this could again be through evaluating their integrations for security within the product, as well as how they are proving their success with third-party validations. And maybe it could be architecture references as well that they are publishing in the market, and these hold a lot of value. So it is always good to keep an eye out of what are these public references that your competitors are relying on or they are publishing for their customer sets. I think I've spoken a lot about the competitive analysis framework for direct, indirect, and emerging startups. But now I want to spend a little bit of my time on how to deal with legacy technology because it is important to unseat these long entrenched internal solutions And it is important here to position the product in a manner that the value that you're bringing outweighs the pain of moving out of these legacy or internal products. How I see legacy technology is essentially it's a problem of adoption that you're not able to solve. And to solve that problem of removing legacy technology from your customers' deployments, I look at it through the lens of a customer journey. And how I divide it is essentially going through the complete journey, which starts off with product awareness, identifying whether or not your customer is really aware of the product that you're selling. Sometimes it happens that, for example, if you're selling a hardware-based product, there's a good chance that your competitor not really aware of, say, an automation product that you're selling alongside. So it is important to increase the awareness of the product, and that could be through your sales channels, through your field teams, through webinars, or directly talking to your customers. The second area is product value evaluation. There is a good chance that the customers are not able to see the product value that you're bringing to the market. And this could be evaluated in two different areas. One could be through the feature sets that you're offering. Is it really bringing the kind of value that your customers are looking for when it comes to adopting your product? And the second one could be the price points when it comes to product value evaluation. Is the price at which you're trying to sell the product justified to unseat something that's already existing in their environment? So it is important to evaluate what kind of product value that you're bringing to your customers. And here, cost analysis is a very big tool set that you can make use of. In addition to that, beyond the cost benefits, you can also evaluate the product value through, say, time reduction in deployment, which is essentially if there's any kind of automation that you're bringing to your customers, it could reduce, say, the automation time or deploying your product in their environment. The third one is purchase experience. Purchase experiences play a huge role in B2B environments because if a customer already has a solution, which is, it could be a traditional way of solving the product, but your purchase cycle or your process of interacting with the sales team is tedious for your customer, it really stops them from adopting your product. So it is important to evaluate your purchase cycles, and making it easy for your customers to buy a product really could solve the purchase experience problem. The fourth one is post-sales services. Again, in B2B environment, it is important to position the post-sales benefits for your customers so that it becomes easier for them to justify the additional cost that they will be investing in your new product. And then finally, renewals and advocacy. I think advocacy plays a huge role in this decision-making process because not just you talking about the product value, but if there are customers that have actually deployed the product, if they are able to talk about the value that the product brings to the table, it makes it really easy for other customers to start adopting it. So identifying your first few customers or first few adopters of the product who are ready to champion the product is one of the important ways in which you can overcome this problem of legacy technology in your customer environments. Now, I want to move towards the implementation strategy. We've spent a lot of time on how to analyze your competitor or understand the value that your competitor is bringing to the product. Now, let's evaluate how we can really integrate it within our strategy and within our product roadmaps. The first step that I generally leverage is the SWOT analysis. It is important to categorize the complete analysis that you've done as your competitors' strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And once you've categorized them into these areas, you can start focusing on the strengths of your competitor. And once you've identified their strengths as well as their opportunities, The next step is to actually evaluate whether those strengths of your competitor are they even bringing any value to your customers. And for that, I do it in 3 steps. The first step is market research. So, first of all, understand where the market is going and what are the new industry trends that are being adopted by customers and what are the new innovations that are coming to the market. For example, since AI is really being adopted by a lot of companies, you can really go ahead and evaluate from the market trends of how much is the adoption and where is it being adopted to really find a course for yourself. And this includes analyzing how big is the target market that you can target for this differentiator that you want to target for yourself or for your product. The next step is industry analyst research. There are industry analysts, for example, Gartner, Forrester, G2, Capterra. All of these industry analysts constantly interact with a lot of customers, and they do send out large scale customer surveys that you can actually leverage and get some concrete data points around whether these, say, feature set or different brand positioning or different sales strategy really makes sense for your product, that even though a competitor is doing today and you feel it as being a strength, these data points actually help you quantify whether or not your customer consider it as a strength or not. Finally, nothing can replace customer interviews, and you can host these customer interviews through your field teams, through focus groups, or even customer advisory boards. Customer advisory boards are very common ways in a B2B environment to evaluate whether or not a new feature set or a new positioning strategy that you're thinking of will fly with your customers or not. Once you've quantified the value a certain differentiation brings to your customers, it is important to map out the differentiation against the customer value. And while evaluating or while integrating it into the strategy, the goal should be to be in the top right quadrant. So, whatever feature set or whatever new strategy that you're planning for must bring you to the top right corner. So, that should be essentially the North Star of how you're moving towards. Finally, the last step, once you've identified what parts of the competitive analysis really make sense for your product, it is important to evaluate what is the cost of actually implementing that part of the strategy. And that cost could be in terms of if it's an innovation, whether you have to hire more researchers or you have to actually innovate within the product, or if it's a sales strategy, you need to evaluate if there are any additional costs attached to implementing this new strategy. The second one is time to market. How quickly can you deliver the solution for your customers? The third one is stopgap solution. If your time to market is higher, is there any other way that you can really help your customers with a problem statement that they are facing or the problem statement that you are trying to solve? And this could be through partnerships, it could be through complementary products, or it could be through additional integrations that you can do with your product. So these are the 3 areas to think about as your final step as you evaluate how to integrate your competitive analysis within your roadmap. All right. So thank you, everyone. I hope the framework was helpful. I've tried to keep it at a very high level. And of course, you need to tailor it to your B2B product that you're actually working on. But this framework essentially covers almost all the areas that you need to think about when you are doing the competitive analysis.
Thank you so much, Devanshi. Devanshi is one of our advisory council members. We really appreciate your contribution and making the time to share your expertise with our product community. Till next time, and hopefully everybody else also joins us again for the next speaker series. Thanks,
Absolutely.
everyone. Thanks,
Thank
Devanshi.
you, everyone, for taking out the time. Thank you.